And welcome to this week's edition of Life Outdoors. I'm your host, Chris Reckling. Today, a little something different for you. We're going to talk about all things nature with Terry Macko with the World Wildlife Fund. Terry is going to join us with the unexpected ways that nature impacts our lives. And when you think about it, we are the air that we breathe, we are the water that we drink, and the food that we consume. But what ways can we make a difference in the world that surrounds us? And what is the World Wildlife Fund doing to make that difference? Let's get right into it with our guest, Terry Macko. And this is Terry Macko, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communication with the World Wildlife Fund. Terry, welcome to Life Outdoors.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to talk more about nature and why nature is so important for all of us.
So the name of this show is Life Outdoors, and so we celebrate all things outdoors. It can be gardening, it can be any sport, any outdoor activity, which also involves nature, which is what you guys are all about. Please tell us more about the World Wildlife Fund, how it started, and what's the mission?
Sure. So World Wildlife Fund is the world's largest conservation organization. We were founded in 1961, and since that time, we have grown to operate in nearly 100 countries around the world. So there are WWF offices, here across the Americas, in Africa, across Asia. We truly are all over the world, working on important conservation areas that are relevant to each place. Every place is different in terms of the issues that are faced, but we have been well known for our work on endangered species, right? So, but we learned very early on that to protect endangered species, you need to protect their entire environment. It's their habitat. It's what they depend on to live and to thrive in nature. So that habitat could be forests, it could be the oceans, it could be rivers and streams. And each of those face different threats. And so we really work on that entire ecosystem to protect the environment for species to thrive. But it's not just about the species, it's about humans too. In every place where we work, local communities, individuals are also living in those places, and they depend on the natural resources that we're protecting as well.
We all can get behind the mission individually, but before we talk about how we can do that, and we'll save that in the next segment, let's talk about your partners, because you can't do this alone. There are so many other people that you work with. You work with governments, you work with individual groups, other environmental groups. What are some of your partners, and how collectively can you tackle this big issue even stronger by coming together as one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so partnerships are critical. They're incredibly important to the work that we do. We can't do any of it alone. So when we are working in places around the world, we are working directly with local communities, and so that communities are benefiting from the nature that they're saving, right? So that's critical and important. We're also working with governments at every level. You have to work with local governments, you have to work with national governments. And we also partner with corporations. Some of corporations are using natural resources in their supply chains, and it's important to protect nature so that those supply chains can continue to provide the products that people are depending on. So many products are coming directly from nature. And so those are the kinds of partnerships that we form, and they're critical and important to the work that we do.
Let's talk about some of those products we're talking about here, because you can talk about it in a macro level with the overall, and in a micro with each individual person. We all use products that are made with nature, whether it's rubber, whether it's electricity, whether it's running water, it's wood, it's a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. What are some of the unexpected ways that people live and deal with nature on a regular basis that you want them to understand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what we know, and we know this from our research, and we know it from our members and our supporters, is that people get the connection that nature has to everyday things like the food that we depend on, right? The water that we drink or the air that we breathe. Those are all understood. But getting out into nature is also really important for people. People appreciate getting out into nature for their own physical health and their own mental well-being. But there are other dependencies that we have in surprising ways. For example, um, 50% of the oxygen we breathe actually comes from life in the ocean. That's a connection that most of us would not make, right? But that means we need to protect our oceans. We need to protect life in the ocean because not just for the intrinsic value of the life in the ocean, but to protect the very air that we're breathing. Um, Likewise, that ocean life is also responsible for the main protein source for over 3 billion people around the planet. So these connections are everywhere. Another one is the medications that we take. 63% of the medications we take are actually derived from nature. And then, there are all sorts of ways that things that we would never imagine, such as something as unnatural seeming as concrete, the sidewalk that's out on the street, the concrete that's in the building you're in. That concrete is derived from sand that is found in our riverbeds or on our beaches. So these connections are everywhere.
So we are nature and nature is us. So why wouldn't we want to protect it? World Wildlife Fund works with countries around the world. Every country is different. Standards are different. You mentioned the ocean. Most countries, not all, but most are connected by oceans. To see the coral reefs in certain countries be devastated and gone, and others being protected, we can do a lot better. Right? I mean, right now the mission is to try to protect our planet for future generations, and that's what WWF does very well.
Thanks. Yes. What we find is that Americans are deeply concerned around protecting nature for future generations. We know that we depend upon it, but so will our children and our grandchildren. So that is critical, and we understand that connection.
So we are visiting now with Terry Macko, Senior Vice President with Marketing and Communications with World Wildlife Fund. We're going to take a short break here on Life Outdoors, and we'll come back with more with Terry. Welcome back to Life Outdoors. This is Terry Macko, Senior Vice President with Marketing and Communications with the World Wildlife Fund. In the first segment, we discussed what WWF does and what they're trying to do around the country with the help of each individual person. Let's dive a little into yourself and your background. What does nature mean to you, and what does this position you have with this important company, resource, mean for yourself, WWF?
Sure. So, my role at WWF is to make sure that we are communicating effectively with the audiences that we reach around the work that we do and the importance of conservation, both globally and the way that it impacts you individually. My own experiences in nature were shaped at an early age, like many people. There were woods that were in the back of my house that I would go and walk through every day after school. And I just loved going through and figuring out, finding things and what I would discover. It was always an adventure. And so I think that that's really similar to the kinds of experiences many kids have. It's so important to get out in nature. And if you're not really close by nature, it's important for families to take a trip into nature, go for a hike on the weekends, really experience it firsthand.
Yeah, Terry, I mean, your experience is like so many others. It all starts at an early age. Every little kid seems to love their dinosaurs. They love reptiles. They love animals. They love butterflies and everything nature. I was drawn to it at a very early age, and it seems to means more to me now at this age than it did then. I try to get out on a regular basis. I'm a surfer. I'm an avid biker. You name it, I'm always outside. I work in the garden. It is a peaceful place to go and enjoy. Even a small sliver seems to make the biggest difference for my mental health. And that's a big component when you consider why we should protect our environment, is your own personal mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. We found in our survey that we conducted over the summer that 43% of Americans really value nature for their mental health, and even more for their physical health and well-being. So combined, people really appreciate the value that nature gives them. And so, it's funny because we sometimes think about nature as that which surrounds us, and it does, and it's so important to take advantage of it. But it doesn't just surround us, it also sustains us. We depend on nature for virtually everything we need in our daily lives.
And which was seeing some of those images just tells us that we need to protect it every chance we get. So what are some of the ways that the average American family can help conserve natural resources? Because that's what we're talking about today, is conserving our natural resources for future generations.
Absolutely. It's there are so many different things that any individual or any family can do, right? So we already talked about, getting out into nature. That's important, right? It's important to for your physical and mental well-being, and it's just important to have a deeper appreciation of nature, and it makes life better, right? But there are other things that you can do that will put less pressure on the environment. For example, food waste is a huge problem for us in our country and around the world. We waste 40% of the food that we produce. And producing all that food puts intense pressure on our natural environment. So, one thing you can do: waste less food. Be more mindful about the choices that you make when you're at the supermarket or the farmer's market. Make sure that you're purchasing food that you and your family will consume, and be more mindful around what you put on your plate versus what you save for later. Right? Don't let what you're putting on your plate end up in the trash can. Right? So that's one thing you can do. Another really important thing is to use less plastic. Use less single-use plastic, right? Plastic is a significant problem for us. About a dump truck of plastic is entering our oceans each and every minute of every day. We need to reverse that. And one way to do that is to start using less plastic yourself. Look for all the ways that you're using it. Of course, carry a reusable water bottle, but look for other ways too. And another thing that you can do is to use cold water when you're washing your clothes. It's just as effective as hot water, and it uses 1/10 of the electricity. So it's not just good for the environment, but it's good for your electric bill too. It's one of the funny things that we find, with all of these things: using less plastic, wasting less food, using less energy when you don't need it. It's not just good for the planet, it's good for you too.
Well said, Terry. And there, you can take that one step further. You talked about plastics and food and water. Water is such a precious resource that some people just don't realize that you shouldn't waste it and the energy it takes to make it fresh. There's ways that you can conserve water around the house, just by checking your leaky pipes or maybe not running while your faucet. There are so many different ways you can make a difference when it comes to just using water.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing to always remember: while sometimes it seems like there's a lot of water around, only 1% of the water that is on the planet is fresh water that's available for our use as human beings.
And Terry, so with the World Wildlife Fund, you have a slogan that nature needs us now. When has nature not needed us? I mean, it seems like man has expanded to every corner of the globe, and we
Right.
use so much of the resources that we're not giving it back. I mean, when you think of deforestation, when you think of the preservation that needs to sustain future generations, I don't know if it's a losing battle, but it has to start somewhere.
Absolutely. Well, we have always needed nature, right? So human beings have always depended on nature. But as we continue to grow and as we continue to use more resources on the planet, it's putting so much more pressure on the natural environment and the natural systems that have sustained us for thousands of years. Um, so at this point, what we have found is that there are so many different areas where we're putting too much pressure on the environment. And so it's not just that we need nature, but nature needs us, right? Nature needs us to protect it. Nature needs us to restore it. Nature needs human beings to take responsibility for nature. It's truly a symbiotic relationship.
All right, Terry, well said. We're going to take a short break here on Life Outdoors and talk more with Terry Macko with the World Wildlife Fund, so stick around for that. Welcome back to Life Outdoors. We are with Terry Macko, Senior Vice President with Communications and Marketing with the World Wildlife Fund. We've been talking about how important it is to help preserve nature and the difference it's making on an individual level. Terry, recently, the World Wildlife Fund has a survey, Globe Scan survey. Can you tell us what that's about and what it found?
Sure. We partnered with GlobeScan to conduct a survey of Americans' attitudes and feelings and beliefs around nature over the course of this past summer. We really wanted to understand how people were thinking and feeling, and we found some things we expected, and also some really surprising results. The one thing that we found that was really enlightening was that Americans are really united around their feelings around nature. So, over 70% of Americans value getting out into nature, and they really appreciate the mental health and physical health well-being overall that nature provides. So that was really clear. But what was surprising was that we found that 3 out of 4 Americans value nature as an important part of our cultural identity. And whether that conjures up images of the bald eagle or the appreciation we have for our national parks, or even just getting out into nature in the woods in the back of your house, right? Like that is an intrinsic American value of being in nature and seeing the association that it has with our own heritage. But what we found was that Americans are also united around their concern around nature. 84% of Americans told us that they were concerned around the threats to nature, with 6 out of 10 saying they were extremely or very concerned. So that did surprise us. I mean, we're concerned around nature because that's our job. That's what we do at World Wildlife Fund, is that we work to protect nature all over the world. But it's not just organizations like us who have this as part of their mission. It's individuals all over who really see it and understand and appreciate that we need nature, that we depend on it, and that nature needs us now too.
Terry, we all understand how important it is to do your part individually to try to protect the resources in our planet and nature in itself. Some people might feel like, well, what's the point when there's big companies and corporations dumping this, or another country's doing that? But how important is it for each individual to take responsibility for the way they live their life, and can that make a difference overall?
Yeah, it can absolutely make a difference, and we found that in our research as well, that individuals appreciated that they need to do their part, and as we talked about, there are a lot of things that you can do, like not wasting food, like not using more plastic than you need, and there are those kinds of actions you can take. But everyone's responsible. And by that, I mean, corporations are responsible for sustainably sourcing their raw materials that they take from nature. And governments at every level are responsible. It's not just the federal government, it's state governments, it's local governments here and around the world. Everyone plays a role. And I think that's really what's important, but also really clear to people. We found that in our research that Americans understand that we all play a part.
And Terry, you're talking about Americans and what our beliefs and thoughts are on the planet and our resources and nature. We understand that the world is and the planet is a huge planet. We can only wrap our head around just how big it is. The World
Mhm.
Wildlife Fund is there for the entire world. What have you learned about the rest of the world that can give us hope that we can turn things around and sustain what we're trying to take care of? And that is the planet.
Mhm. Yeah, well, we find that I'm speaking about Americans because that's the survey that we
Sure.
did over the course of this summer, right? And we are here from WWF, the U.S. arm. But yes, we have offices around the world and programs, more importantly, in conservation that is effective around the world. And what we find is that there are very similar issues and concerns, right? And it varies, it differs by culture and by country. But the appreciation of nature is something that is truly something that is important globally, but also understood globally. The issues are different depending on where you are, but there's a deep appreciation and understanding that we need to protect nature. People all over the globe understand how we need nature, and all over the world, nature needs us now too.
And Terry, we're only got a couple more minutes left. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you just tell us more about WWF, the people that you work with, and how much fun it is to work on a regular basis, knowing that you're trying to do something good for all of us?
Well, thanks. Well, the people I work with are absolutely amazing. And at WWF, we have such depth in science and in conservation across many fields, right? So we have expert biologists and we have expert scientists, and they are the ones who are steering our conservation work. And so it's wonderful to work alongside them. I mean, my job is to simply communicate to the audiences that are concerned about our work and what we do. And so that's my role. But it's so much fun to learn from such experts. The one thing that I have thought about in my years at WWF is just how much fun it is to go to work every day, because I know I'm going to learn something new that day. Because the depth of expertise that we have, whether that's in oceans or forestry or sustainable production, it is truly an amazing place to work, and just a real gift to work alongside such smart and passionate and dedicated colleagues.
So nice to know that you're making a difference, and when every person can understand that we are the air that we breathe, we are the water that we drink, we are the food that we consume, we are nature and nature is us, and when we can get that message across to everybody, I think we can make the world a better place. Terry, I can't thank you enough for joining us here on Life Outdoors, and thank you for the World Wildlife Fund for making a difference in the world that we live in.
Thank you so much for having me today. Really appreciate the time.